Alright, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Kerbal Space Program. And in the last video, we finally got into an orbit around Kerbin. We also upgraded our mission control, our tracking station, and I believe at the end we also updated our astronaut complex. We could do EVAs and stuff like that in flight. Now, the main goal for this video is going to be to explore the moon, and basically all we need to do is fly by the moon, and we get 64,000 bunts for science and a little bit of reputation. Now, I am lacking some of the parts that I would like to have so that I can, build the rocket to take us to the moon really efficiently. So what I've done in between episodes is I took the Science Junior and I kind of filled in the gaps as far as the right here. Where is it? I believe it's material study. So I think the only one we had to begin with was in space near Kerbin. So I just got the other three, so landed, upper atmosphere, and flying at Kerbin, so just like lower atmosphere. And I did not go as far as to get the in space high above Kerbin because we don't need that many points right now. We just needed 135 points, I believe, because we want to go into the research center, and there are two modules that I want to purchase with our science points. One of them being the general construction for 45 science, which will give us the strut connectors, and these will allow our ships to stay a little bit more compact and a lot less wobbly. And really the only other part that I'm excited about in this pack is the TD25 decoupler. That'll come on later once we get into some of the 2.5 millimeter rocket parts, and the launch stability enhancer also when we get to some of the larger rockets that may need it. But for right now, we just want the strut connector, so we're just going to go ahead and purchase this for 45. And then the second module I want to purchase is the fuel systems for 90 science. And the reason I want to purchase the fuel systems is, one, we get access to the larger 2.5 meter tanks. I think I said millimeter earlier. It's not millimeter, but the 2.5 meter tanks, I think we get like 3 of them. Yeah, we get 3 of the 2.5 meter tanks, and then we also get a T800 1.25 meter fuel tank, which is going to save us some parts in our rocket that we're going to build today. Since we don't have enough money to upgrade the VAB to allow us to use more parts, we're going to have to use parts that basically make 2 parts into 1. And then the main reason we're going to get this module is for the external fuel duct, pretty much fuel pipeline, which allows you to move fuel automatically into one source into another. And so what we are going to do with this after we purchase it is I have already gotten a ship somewhat ready to go. You'll notice it's called Moon FBTO-1. That basically means Moon Flyby to Orbit 1, and we will be orbiting the moon, but that'll come later. That'll come later in this video, but it will be in this video. So right now, we are sitting at a delta V of 6,074, and I believe to orbit the moon, we need roughly around 45,000. Excuse me, not 45,000, 4,500. So we should be good on delta V, but one of the problems we have is that we have reached our part limit and our mass limit. I did forget about this. So we want to go ahead and also, real quick, upgrade our launch pad. We're not going to update the VAB because it's super expensive, 225,000 right now, which is a lot. We get a lot of parts. We get 255 parts instead of 30, so it's a lot. It's a huge upgrade. But we are only going to upgrade the launch pad because it's only 50,000 funds. And this takes our total vessel weight from 18 tons to 140 tons. So we're going to go ahead and purchase that, and it updates and looks all nice and actual rocket science-y. And then we're going to go back into the VAB and finish off building what we have here. So we are currently at the part limit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away some of these parts. I probably should have done this before I started, but that's a-okay. And we're going to completely get rid of these. We're going to get rid of this. So this is really all we have right now to start off with. That's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to take these longer or larger. They're longer. I think they hold twice as much fuel as the ones we just had on there because they're, twice the size, and I think they're just pretty much a 1-to-1. Yep. So we're going to add 2 of these here, and then we're going to go ahead and put back on the T45 swivel engines, and then we're going to add some decouplers right here. Gonna add 2 of them, 1 on each side, and then we're gonna go ahead and add, that's too high, isn't it? We'll add it like right there. Okay, good. Now we're going to add our two other T45 swivel engines, and let's see if we can't just match those up real nice. There we go. And then we are going to add some more fuel tanks. So I'm just going to add 2 of these smaller ones because I don't think we will need that much fuel. And we're going to add some aerodynamics so those don't create drag on our way up through the atmosphere. And then we're also going to add some fins once again for stabilization, as always, so we don't go flipping around. And we have our aerodynamics to the back of the rocket. That blue aerodynamics ball will go below the center mass ball here in a second. I believe that's going to, yep, okay, there we go. So that is looking clean. Let's go ahead and move these down just a little bit. No, that is not what I wanted to do. There we go. All right, so we should be going on that. Let's go ahead and change this color back to what it was. We need like just under, I think, 6,000 delta V to get to a lunar orbit and back. So currently our delta V is great. We want to check our staging because this is going to be very important. We want to have all 3 of these engines fire at once, and you'll notice that dropped our delta V, our total delta V up here, by about 500 meters per second. But what we are going to do now, so we can fire all 3 of these at the same time, so I think we get a better thrust to weight ratio if we do that. So right now we have a 2.1. If we didn't fire all these at once, we would have a 1.4 thrust to weight ratio at sea level. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add these external fuel ducts. We're just going to add them right in here. So we're going to click on the part that it's flowing from, and then attach it to the part it's flowing to. So we'll just click these on the outer tanks, and then click them on the inner tanks. And then the last thing we're gonna do, so it holds the rocket together up at these like weaker points that are away from the decouplers and all of that good stuff. We're just gonna add some more anti-wobbliness up there. And the thing that's great about the strut connectors and the fuel pipes or whatever is that I believe they're massless and they're dragless. So pretty much no matter where you put them or how many you put on there, they're not really gonna affect your rocket at all. I think that's a thing. Do not quote me on that. I could be completely wrong on that, but I believe that is definitely a thing. So let's check out our parts and weight. We are right at 30 parts. Excellent. And I think we did exactly what we wanted to do. We made a more efficient rocket, but I don't think we really raised the delta V that much. So I think I'm doing the right thing here, but it could have been just completely something I did not need to do at all. Now, I would love to add some science to this, but we do have crew reports and EVAs in flight available to us. So those are pretty much some science, and we can get a lot of science points from those anyway, especially the EVA reports, because if we stay in a low orbit around the moon long enough, we can pick up the different locations, and we can do continuous EVAs at the different locations. We can get a lot of science doing it that way. So I may cheese that a little bit, like in between episodes. I don't think I'm going to do it now because we're going to take several trips to the moon, so we'll have plenty of opportunities to do that later. But for right now, I think this rocket is ready to go, ready to fly to the moon. So we're going to go ahead and save our craft and launch the vehicle. Let me check my staging real quick. Yep. Let's go ahead and fire those at the same time. We can always throttle down so that doesn't mess us up later. Let's make sure we have a heat shield because, yep, we do. Okay. Cool. Awesome. I think we are ready to go. Let's go ahead and save once more and launch the vessel. Now, I believe I am forgetting to mention one thing that I have changed in between episodes, and that is I have added the scatterer mod. So if the environment, the atmosphere, the water looks a little bit different, that's because of the scatterer mod that I installed using the CCAN launcher, which is like the best Kerbal Space Program launcher, because you just add mods, you just click the check boxes, and you install them, and you don't have to do shit, and it just does it all for you. It's awesome. I personally think this makes the water look insanely better. So, yeah. I like it a lot. Let's go ahead, and enough with all that faff. We're just going to go ahead and launch our rockets and make sure our SAS are stabilizing stuff. I don't know what it's called. I know that there was an acronym for it that I forget what it is. Make sure that's turned on. Make sure our throttle is to 100, and then Jeb, we're going to go ahead and launch. Press spacebar. Stage it. We don't have the greatest thrust to weight ratio. I messed up the staging. We can always do this at launch because it's really easy. Because it's literally a click and drag problem. I don't know how I missed this, but I did. Okay. Yeah, now that's going to give us a thrust to weight ratio of 1.6. Awesome. But anyway, well, I'm certain we have enough. So I'm just going to go ahead and launch. And just like before, as soon as we hit that 100 meters per second milestone, we're going to go ahead and tilt over to the 85-degree marker. And then we're going to keep tilting over using the gimbal in our T45 swivel liquid fuel engines. We're going to tilt over to the 45-degree marker on the nav ball once we reach about 10,000 meters, so we may need to hurry this up a little bit. And this will give us a very efficient gravity turn, or so I've been told. I don't actually know. Let's go ahead and throttle back just a little bit, just because we're hitting a lot of aerodynamic pressure. Did not want to hit the M key. That's okay. I wanted to zoom in a little bit. All right, so as soon as those, we're going to be a little bit short on that, but that's fine. I'm not really too worried about it. Once these run out, we're going to go ahead and decouple them and then throttle back up on our main stage engine. There we go. And then we'll press the Z key to throttle back up until we hit right around 85 kilometer apoapsis. 80 kilometer apoapsis, one of the two. Both are good. And I think we can safely add this number right here with this number right here, which gives us right around 6,000 meters per second. Could be wrong. I think, and we do have the exiting atmosphere in about 60 seconds, so we have hit the marker right there. There's 86,000 meters. That should be good enough. And then we're going to time warp up a little bit, some physical time warp, up until our altitude hits right at 70,000 meters, so we can hit this apoapsis right on the money, because I believe I have the D-Magic advanced maneuver nodes or something like that, so we are at 86.5? Which allows you just to pin a maneuver node to like any given point, which is awesome. I definitely recommend that mod. It's just so easy. All right, there we go. All right, perfect. So now we're going to tilt over to the blue maneuver node marker on our nav ball, which is just under, it's just like radial in to the prograde marker. We're just going to get right on that. We have a burn time of 49 seconds, which means we need to burn right in between the 25, T-minus 25 and T-minus 24. So we burn on 24 and a half seconds on either side of the apoapsis, which gives us a nice circular orbit. And we missed it, because I was explaining stuff. Oh well, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. It'll be alright. So now we just need to make sure our periapsis gets above 70,000 meters. I think it's good right there. 80,000 and 109. So, you know, me explaining things got in the way of our perfectly circular orbit. It's slightly elliptical, but that'll be a-okay. So now what we want to do, since we are in an orbit, we are in a stable orbit around Kerbin, I believe we can do an EVA. I don't know if we did that in the last episode. So let's go ahead and do an EVA report with Jebediah. We're going to go ahead and keep this experiment. We're going to board. I'm not going to do a crew report yet, because you can only pretty much do one per capsule, per flight. So I'm going to wait until we get near the moon to do that. Now, speaking of the moon, we want to go ahead and left-click the moon. We want to set it as our target, which will give us a yellow line just to indicate it, and two very important markers, which are the descending node and the ascending node. So we're going to pin those, right-click on both of those. I don't know why it's not doing that. There you go. All right. Now, another thing with the maneuver node, advanced maneuver node, whatever mod that is great about this, is I can now pin either to, since it's the moon and it orbits in, you know, Kerbal Space Program around the equator, like, perfectly. There's no, like, degree of attitude. I think that's the wrong word. But there's no difference in degree of attitude, I believe. So it's right at 0. So I can pretty much select either of these two. We're going to go with target, just in case. And then ascending node. So I believe we are slightly... We want to go down a little bit. So we're going to pull on the... What is this one? I forget what it's called. I forget what this marker's called. But we're going to... Maybe it's radial? I don't think it's radial. But we're going to pull on that basically until the ascending node and descending node both say 0.0 degrees. And that way we are perfectly in line with the with the orbit of the moon. So now we're going to go ahead and rotate our ship to point once again at the blue maneuver node marker. And I am going to do something real quick. Since we have a burn time of 1 second, we could screw that up and overshoot it since it's so short. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on our engine here, and I'm going to bring down the thrust limiter to about 10%, which will give us a burn time of 10 seconds. And then we are perfectly on that maneuver node and that, I guess, descending downward in direction of our orbit. Whatever. You know what I'm talking about. We're facing downwards. We're gonna shoot that way. That's all there is to it. Now, we got 10 seconds, so we want to burn 5 seconds on each side of T-0, or the 5 seconds on each side of the descending node here. Well, technically it's the ascending node until we make it the descending node. So we're just going to slow down the time warp, and as soon as that hits 5 seconds, we're going to throttle to 100%. 100% of the 10% limit. So this will just make it a little bit more accurate, go a little bit slower. We'll try and get as close to this as we can. We overshot it just a smidge. That's good enough. Honestly, I'm going to take that. That's good enough. We overshot it anyway, but that's fine. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to perform a maneuver that's called, I believe, the Hohmann transfer. We're going to, at any point in our orbit, probably around here, I'm guessing, right near the Kerbal Space Center, we're going to burn in the prograde direction, which is going to extend our apoapsis out towards here, near the moon, and hopefully that'll bring us close enough into the moon's sphere of influence. And normally, if we were just extending our, apoapsis, or we're just extending our orbit, we would do it to, let's say here, and then we would burn in the prograde direction at the apoapsis, at our new apoapsis, to extend our periapsis until they're equal and make a circular orbit. But instead, we're going to go and try and get into the sphere of influence of the moon. So it doesn't really matter where we start the maneuver node, because we're going to probably switch it here in a second. We're just going to move it around. So we're just going to pull on the prograde marker here, and we got that pretty well. So yeah, so this is going to be our new orbit. This larger circle is going to be our new orbit after we make contact with the moon's gravity. So we have a periapsis, moon periapsis of 984 kilometers. So I'm going to just burn on the prograde a little bit more, or we can move this around. Let's move it that way a little bit so we don't have to burn as much, because I want to get that right around 20,000, and that should be close enough to get the in space near science stuff. So let's set up for our maneuver by rolling over to the blue maneuver node marker on our nav ball. We do have a burn time of 2 minutes and 22 seconds, so this is a long burn. There is a stage separation in here, so we will have to separate, which is why I stacked the decouple and the engine activation, the second stage engine activation, right on top of each other. So just as soon as it decouples, we just hit spacebar once and everything goes. And there we go. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. There we go. We're going to start the burn, and I realize why this is going to take us 2 minutes and 22 seconds. I just realized this is because I still have the thrust limiter to 10%. I never changed that, but that'll be fine. It shouldn't mess with us like at all. It shouldn't be a problem. It's just, going to take us a little bit longer. Okay, so here we go at the stage separation. And look at that just drift away. As we speed on past, as our delta V increases immensely. So that was one of the reasons I initially installed better burn time on previous playthroughs, is because it did that for you, but now since Kerbal Space Program does it anyway, I think they took that out of the original mod, which is kind of funny that it's still called better burn time, but I still like the mod as it is for like targets and landing and stuff like that, and we are very, very close. We kind of, yeah, okay, so I didn't like that thrust limiter thing. So one thing we're going to have to do, right now, we're crashing into the moon because we don't have any periapsis. We get into the sphere of influence of the moon, don't have any periapsis, which means we're going to go ahead and crash into it. So what I'm going to do is just burn on the retrograde to change that orbit once again, and I'm just using shift just to throttle just a smidge, and there we go, our periapsis, 20,000. Perfect. Now, pretty much the only thing we need to do is go ahead and warp to where we are in the sphere of influence around the moon. Let's go ahead and open up our contract window, because as soon as we get into the sphere of influence, this should check off. There we go. So we have completed that contract, and we still have about 2 hours and 50 minutes before we escape the moon's sphere of influence and go back into Kerbin's, and then if we're not careful by then, we will go into the orbit of Kerbal, or the sun. So one thing we want to do while we're in this flyby of the moon is, and we have completed our contract, we're going to go ahead and go back to the Space Center, because we should be fine for 2 hours and 50 minutes of in-game time, which is 2 hours and 50 minutes of real time, unless you time warp. And then what we're going to do from here is we're going to go into the mission control. We're going to find once again, the Kerbin World First Record Keeping Society contracts, and we're going to select this one, explore the moon once again, so orbit the moon, and go on an orbital spacewalk near the moon. So we're going to go ahead and accept that contract, and we're just going to do all of this in one flight. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and accept this one too, because we're probably going to do this in the next episode, where we actually land on the moon. So now we're going to go into our tracking station, and we have 2 options to choose from. We have the debris of what we just launched. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that. Go ahead and terminate it, because it's debris and we don't have any use for it. There's no fuel or anything in it. Now we do have the actual ship that we were just flying, and we're just going to go ahead and fly it once again. And we do still have right around 1,800 meters per second of delta V and a burn time of 1 minute and 20 seconds. So this should be plenty of resources to be able to do what we're about to do. So to get into an orbit around the moon, we just need to basically slow our velocity and have the moon's orbit catch us. So instead of trying to increase our velocity to get around Kerbin, we need to decrease our velocity to stay within the orbit of the moon. So I'm going to click and add a maneuver node to the periapsis, and I'm just going to drag on the retrograde because we're slowing down. I'm going to pin that moon apoapsis, and we want to circularize this orbit. So we're going to bring that down to about 20,000 meters. What is it, 20 kilometers? Yeah. Sorry, I'm American. And there we go. All right. That is a very, very tight orbit, and it's only going to take us 16 seconds to do so. So now I'm going to go ahead and select the retrograde marker, which we are already on. Not going to worry about rolling over to the blue maneuver node thing, because it's pretty much once we hit in the 8-second mark of the T minus, that blue marker is going to be pretty much at the retrograde. So I'm going to go ahead and warp to the next maneuver. Need some more soda. Need some more soda. Ah, tasty. Okay, here we go. We got about 5 seconds till we got to start the burn. 2, 1, and there we go. So we're burning against the direction that we're going. And there we go. We have an orbit. And we're just going to bring this hopefully down right on the money. Hopefully we don't overshoot this, because that could end in catastrophe. There we go. That's good enough. All right, so we got an apoapsis of 20,000 meters, 20,000.5 meters, and a periapsis of almost 20,000 meters. So pretty circular. We're in 1.3 meters per second of our maneuver. So we are currently orbiting the moon. So now all we need to do for our contract is go on an orbital spacewalk near the moon. Okay, and I just basically warped around till it was brighter on the moon, because, you know, I didn't want to... It's a shit video if you're just looking at the dark side of the moon, right? So all we need to do now is we need to perform an EVA around the moon. So this is pretty simple. It's EVA on Jeb here. And we're going to EVA report. So EVA report from space just above the moon's lowlands. So that's a biome, so that we can... So basically what that means is, like, there's different biomes on the moon, and if you're close enough, you can hit different biomes, and you can continually get this 24 science if we just sit here and continuously do EVA reports, because we can always dump them back into the capsule, and they don't overlap and get, like, deleted, because some of them do that. So we're going to go ahead and keep the experiment. We're going to board. We're going to put that experiment into our capsule, and as you'll see, is we have 2 EVA reports in here, so great. We do want to take a crew report, which is just space near the moon. It doesn't have a biome lock, so we can only do this once. And that's 15 science, so I think we have a total of right around 47 science for this mission already. And we have completed 2 contracts, so explore the moon, orbit the moon, and go on an orbital spacewalk near the moon. Good job, Jeb. You did great. Let's go ahead and, since we are in a stable orbit, and check out the Space Center once again, just to see if there's another mission control contract that we can do while we're at the moon right now. Interesting. Okay, so our next contract that we're going to do in the next episode, because it's very, very similar to this one, but is going to take us an entirely different launch, is next, we're going to have to walk on the surface of the moon, so we're going to have to land on the moon and gather scientific data from the moon. So we will complete half of this contract in this episode. So let's go ahead and accept that, because why not? We're going to get at least, we're going to get this one and this one in the next episode. And then I think this one too, because we already have this. We have science on the ship that we're currently flying for this episode, from science data from space around Kerbin. So let's go ahead and accept that one. And now we're going to get Jeb to land right back on Kerbin. So this is the easier part of all of this. So we're going to go back to our tracking station. We're going to fly our ship, our vessel, our tin can with fuel. And what we're going to do is we can do this very, very soon. So what we need to do to get back into the orbit of Kerbin is we need to increase our velocity to break free from the sphere of influence of the moon. Now, there's a couple ways we can do this. So if we increase our velocity here, so we're going this way around the moon. If we increase it here, we're going to end up flying in this direction. We're going to go into Kerbin's sphere of influence, and we're going to be in a very high orbit around Kerbin, because we're basically taking the moon's velocity and adding the velocity to escape. But if we go here and escape the moon's sphere of influence in the moon's retrograde direction of its orbit, so going this way, we subtract the moon's velocity from our velocity, which will allow us to get a lot closer to Kerbin without using near as much fuel, or delta V. So what we're going to do is I'm going to set a maneuver node right around here, add maneuver, and I'm going to pull on the prograde marker, and it's going to extend it this way, but eventually it's going to break off and bring this moon escape node right here. It's going to bring this around here this way. And as you'll notice, this periapsis for Kerbin's orbit is just going to shrink if we just continue to do this. Continue to pull on the prograde, and it's only taking us 12 seconds of burn time, so not long at all. And we want to bring this periapsis right just inside the atmosphere. We don't want to go too deep into the atmosphere because we'll have way too much velocity to land if we just punch straight through. But if we enter the atmosphere at sort of like an angle, we'll be able to pull off a lot of velocity with drag higher up in the atmosphere, in the less dense atmosphere, so that we don't burn up. Even though we do have a heat shield, it'll just be a lot easier. So we just need to get this in 70,000 meters. So I'm going to say right around 50,000 is probably good. So there we go. Our periapsis is right at 50,000 meters. And I just kind of want to show you that if you put this over here and escape the opposite way, that happens. We escape Kerbin's orbit because we're going so fast. I don't know all the math behind it, but I know this way works. So we're going to drag this back around to where we had it, and hopefully we can get this back inside the 50,000 mark. Hopefully. There we go. Perfect. All right. Now we're going to just roll back on over to the... We can just roll on the prograde marker. And it's probably more efficient to do this probably back here, so back where we were. But, I mean, honestly, it's only going to save us like a few seconds of burn time. All right, here we go. In 4 seconds, we're going to throttle up. We're going to extend our apoapsis of the moon. And we're going to be in a hyperbolic orbit, I believe. Something like that. And we want to watch this periapsis very closely as it gets closer and closer to Kerbin. We're going to cut the throttle, and then we're just going to very slowly just kind of inch the throttle there. 48,000 meters, that's good enough. So again, the moon is going this way. We are launching in the retrograde direction of the moon, so it's going to kill off some of the velocity that we have, which will allow us to bring our periapsis closer to Kerbin without using near as much delta V or fuel. So we're going to time warp back until we are in Kerbin's sphere of influence. There we go. And one thing we can do, since we're way high above Kerbin right now, is we could probably do another EVA report if I stop the time warp. There we go. Okay, I probably should have waited till that tilted over. Jeb, oh, you are flying all over the place. Here we go. Engage SAS, please. Thank you. Let's go retrograde. And then we'll EVA. Okay, there we go. A lot less flopping about. Okay, EVA report. In space, high above Kerbin. There we go. We don't have that one yet. That's all I wanted. I'm going to go ahead and board. And that should be... I think we have two of them. So we have low and low Kerbin, and then we also have high above Kerbin. So that'll be good. So now all we need to do is get inside the atmosphere. So we're going to warp till we're very, very close to Kerbin. We're going to make sure we turn on our SAS and switch over to the retrograde hold. And we're just going to speed up time warp just a little bit. And notice we are going extremely fast. We are going about 3,000 meters per second, which will absolutely make us burn up if we're not careful. So let's just get inside this atmosphere. And I don't know the most efficient way to do this, but we are still speeding up even though we're going through the atmosphere, so we're going to accumulate a lot of heat very quickly. And what I'm going to do to counteract that is I'm going to burn in the retrograde direction, so we kill off a lot more velocity, a lot quicker. I don't know if this is the best way to do this, but it's worked for me in the past, and I'm just going to do it. And so basically, once we get rid of all of our fuel in this last tank of ours, we are going to decouple and use the heat shield and just use drag and aerodynamics to slow us down. So I believe we are circularizing our orbit. Yep, there we go. And we will now no longer be able to skip off into space. So we have about 100 more meters per second to kill, so we'll get right inside the 2,000 meters per second. Nope, there we go. We're going to decouple, and then we should start slowing down here very soon, very slowly, yes, because we have a lot of drag with this flat face, once again, of the heat shield. So now I'm going to physical time warp this up just to get it done really quickly, because it's pretty much easy peasy from here on out. All we got to do is press spacebar one more time as soon as this turns gray, and Jeb will be very, very safe. We can recover the vessel, get all the science, complete the contracts, and all that good stuff. So there we go. Our heat is wearing off. We have significantly dropped in our velocity, and our parachute is safe to deploy. So let's go ahead and deploy it. Now let's kill off some more velocity. Want to get right inside that 6 meters per second. Let's slow down that time warp just in case that decides to mess with us. So now our parachute is fully deployed, and we are at a solid 6.25 meters per second, which is definitely safe enough for us to land on Kerbin. So there we go. Jeb has safely landed back. We are going to do one last EVA just to get a little bit more science. So EVA report, 2.4 science. I will take that from Kerbin's desert. Awesome. Keep experiment. We're going to board back in and recover the vessel. Lots of science earned that mission. We got a total of 77.4 for the mission and a grand total of 121, which is a lot. We can do a lot with 121 science. And we get some of the funds back from our parts, which don't really matter too much, but we do have a whopping 812,000 funds, which increases our funds by around 600,000, which is good because now we can start upgrading stuff again. And that rocket, I don't think was very expensive. It was a very cheap rocket in terms of Kerbal Space Program. So Jebediah earned 3 XP. I don't know how much he needs to level up. We can see that here in a little bit. But we do have a total reputation of 184, bringing us up to, I believe, an 18%. And here's some of Jebediah's ribbons for the video. So 200 or more science points, EVA while not in a stable orbit, first Kerbal in EVA in 0 atmosphere around the moon, first Kerbal on EVA in a stable orbit around the moon, first Kerbal orbiting around the moon. These are all very, very similar. First EVA in 0 atmosphere around Kerbin, first Kerbal EVA in stable orbit around Kerbin, and I believe first EVA in space. Awesome. So lots of world firsts for Mr. Jebediah here. We can go ahead and close out of that. And let's go ahead and take a look at Mission Control, see if there's anything else we can do in the next episode without having to mess with too much other stuff. So it doesn't look like there's any of those, like, magical contracts that just kind of fit into what we were doing anyway. Lots of rescuing people from the orbits of various bodies. So let's see if we can't find something that will definitely help us out in our next episode to land on the moon, plant a flag, maybe take some surface samples if we upgrade our research and development center, which we may be able to do, except it's really expensive. So if we upgrade this, we could take surface samples, which is great for science. It's awesome for science. We may have to do this one, even though it's very, very hefty, because we could just get an absolute assload of science from it. I know on some places on the moon you get like 125 science from one location. But in all honesty, we should be able to make the moon landing happen with pretty much the exact same rocket we just used. Had plenty of Delta V to get to and from where we needed to go, and landing on the moon doesn't take that much Delta V. It takes like 580. And we had plenty of fuel left over, so we should be able to, if we pinch our resources, we should be able to get that no problem with pretty much the exact same rocket, just with some landing legs, so we can land on the moon. So I'm not going to add anything from the research and development department, but what I am going to do is I'm going to upgrade it so we can take the surface samples while we're at the moon in the next episode. We should be able to plant flags with this one. Yep. So we should be able to do everything we need to do at the moon in the next episode. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, go ahead and leave a like, comment, or subscribe. Down below, hit that little bell notification so that you get notified every time we go live or post a new video. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, and TrueAchievements.com to keep up to date on everything else that I'm doing. And with that said, once again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you dudes in the next video.